listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I help people who are engaging in anything they think counts as infidelity to deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. If you are in the midst of a confounding infidelity situation and you are ready to begin the process of resolving it in a way that is truly right for you, I can help you do it. When you're ready to talk, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. If you want to learn more about the coaching packages that I currently offer and my current pricing, you can find that information on the services page of my website. Okay, as the title of today's episode would suggest, today we're going to talk about why you might not want to wait to get caught cheating. Now, I'm aware that I'm treading a fine line by talking about this topic in the way that I'm going to today. I don't want to sow fear, and I certainly don't want to suggest that if you cheat, you will most definitely get caught. I know there are some people out there who will tell you that if you cheat, you will eventually get caught. It's a for sure thing, and it's just a matter of time until that happens. But that just isn't the empirical reality. The reality is that plenty of people who cheat do not get caught, and it's entirely possible that you might never get caught. And moreover, there are plenty of things that you can do to greatly reduce the possibility of getting caught, right? However, it is also true that sometimes people do get caught. It most definitely happens. And sometimes it happens because people are kind of sloppy about covering their tracks. But sometimes it happens because of some freak occurrence that might not have been preventable. Or because the person who you're cheating on just picks up on the fact that there's a disturbance in the force. You may not have given them any concrete reasons to suspect that something is amiss, but they might just know that something is up anyway. And the longer you keep on doing whatever you're doing, the more chances you create for these kinds of things to happen, the more chances you create to potentially get caught. A lot of folks keep their infidelity situations going on and on and on because they quote unquote don't know what they want or they don't want to make decisions. And sometimes people think that this state of not knowing what they want will somehow protect them from being discovered and possibly being discovered in dramatic fashion. But what I want to make absolutely clear is that it doesn't work that way, okay? You do not have an invisible cloak, so to speak. Now, again, I really, really want to stress that I'm not saying all of this to stoke paranoia. I really don't want to do that, so much so that I almost decided not to make this episode. But in keeping with my belief that it's better to treat things that could happen with an appropriate level of concern rather than ignoring scary possibilities entirely or becoming so terrified of scary possibilities that you become completely paralyzed, I decided to go ahead and create this episode. And the basic points that I want to impress upon you today are as follows. You probably don't want to get caught. Getting caught does not have to be the end of the world, and if it happens to you, you will survive, and so will everyone else involved. But it can be pretty unpleasant. And so I want you to consider that in addition to minimizing your risk of getting caught to the best of your ability, you may also want to consider the possibility that you could get caught as one of the many reasons why it might be a great idea to take it upon yourself to resolve your infidelity situation as efficiently as you reasonably can. That doesn't mean you need to panic and attempt to deal with all of it in the next 48 hours. It just means you might want to take the bull by the horns and move steadily and tenaciously in the direction of sorting your situation out. And in case you don't know this already, I can help you do this. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Now, as you may be well aware, sometimes when we're cheating, we kind of want to get caught. Or sometimes we don't kind of want to get caught. We really want to get caught because we think it will make things easier. We think that if we just got caught, then the cat would be out of the bag and we wouldn't have to make any decisions because the person we're committed to would definitely leave us. And although that might be sad, at least we wouldn't have to decide to leave them and tell them that we've decided we want to end our relationship with them. For some folks, doing those things that I just mentioned seems so awful or so impossible that getting caught cheating actually sounds like a great alternative. But I want to suggest to you that this line of reasoning may be a little shaky. For starters, just because you think someone will leave you if they catch you cheating does not mean they actually will. Even if in the past your partner has explicitly told you that they would do that, that doesn't mean it will actually happen should the situation arise. You may think that someone catching you cheating will mean that you don't have to make a decision about the future of that relationship, but that might not happen. Yes, of course, it's true that sometimes when people catch their partner cheating, the person who has been cheated on tells their cheating partner that they are done with the relationship and they walk out and the whole situation is brought to a very swift conclusion of sorts. Yes, that happens, but not always. Sometimes the person who catches their partner cheating does not do anything like that. Sometimes they just want their cheating partner to apologize and beg to save the relationship. And that could happen to you. Your partner could catch you cheating and they could say, just give up your relationship with that other person and come back to me and we'll forget about all of this. So instead of being relieved of having to make a decision if your partner catches you cheating, you may have to make different decisions than you thought you'd have to make. Or you may have to make the same decisions, such as whether or not you want to stay married to your spouse or stay in your relationship with your primary partner who you've been cheating on. But you'll be making those decisions within an entirely different context. So that's important to consider. But on top of that, I encourage you to consider that getting caught cheating can be a pretty unpleasant experience for everyone involved. Again, I really want to stress that this episode is not about fear-mongering. I am not saying that you're going to get caught for sure, and I am not saying that getting caught cheating is always a terrible experience or needs to be a terrible experience. Sometimes people catch their partner cheating and they aren't exactly happy about it, but they handle the whole thing in a very pragmatic, non-dramatic way. And everybody deals with the situation with as much respect for all parties involved as possible, right? And furthermore, people can and do have good and even great relationships with ex-partners that they have cheated on. People can and do have great relationships with their families, even if their marriage or their relationship ended because of their cheating, and that led to some disruption in their family members' lives. So I want to make it really clear that you getting caught cheating does not have to turn into a cataclysmic disaster that will ruin your life forever. I am not saying that if you get caught cheating, it will necessarily or by definition be a terrible, terrible thing. But it is also true that if your partner catches you cheating, they may be very, very upset. They may be extremely upset. And when humans are very, very upset and they do not know how to digest their very intensely uncomfortable emotions, they tend to act from those emotions in some pretty big ways. In other words, when people are really angry and hurt and they don't know how to digest their anger and hurt, they may do things that are pretty dramatic or pretty intense. They may do things that we consider hostile or vengeful or hateful or defensive or vindictive or excessive or whatever. And on the one hand, We may not like this kind of behavior, and that's fair enough. If we've cheated on someone and they scream at us for days and set our car on fire and then go to our affair partner's house and tell their spouse that they've been having an affair with us, we may not like that at all, right? In general, we don't want these kinds of things to happen. My guess is that you would not want these kinds of things to happen in your life. So, but we also, even if we don't like these behaviors, we can have a sense of why they occur and what we may be able to do to prevent ourselves from having to deal with them. What I want to impress on you today is that even though you don't have absolute power to prevent these kinds of things from happening, because you cannot control other people's behavior, you do have the power to deal with your situation more proactively instead of waiting to get caught. So, to echo what I said a moment ago, the first and perhaps most important thing you need to keep in mind is that most of us have never learned how to digest our own discomfort. Most of us have never learned how to deal with our most uncomfortable emotions, or even our mildly uncomfortable emotions for that matter. And so what we do so often when we feel tremendously uncomfortable is blame the supposed source of our discomfort. And many people, upon discovering that their partner has been cheating on them, are quite upset and are dealing with a lot of uncomfortable emotions. And they blame their cheating partner for causing their uncomfortable emotions. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about the sources of our emotions or the causes of our emotions, and you know that no one ever makes us feel anything. But your partner may not know that. They may not have any understanding of how their emotions work. And moreover, if they've caught you cheating, they may not care how their emotions work. They may just want to be mad at you, and they may want to hold you responsible for them being mad at you. In addition to not knowing how to deal with our uncomfortable emotions, in our society, and I'm speaking from the context of the United States, and this certainly applies in other places as well, we collectively think that cheating is a very bad thing. And we tend to think we are completely and totally justified for being very, very angry if someone has cheated on us. And moreover, we tend to think we are totally justified for being very, very angry at the person who cheated on us, and perhaps angry at whoever they have cheated on us with, too. The idea, as you may have noticed, that cheaters are bad people and people who get cheated on are victims is pretty prevalent, right? And so when we are cheated on, we have all of these readily available beliefs circulating in the cultural fog that we can latch onto about how we've been wronged and how legitimate it is for us to act on our anger in whatever ways we want to. And in a sense, I think that is so deeply fascinating and also so deeply ironic. Collectively, we tend to believe that cheaters are, by definition, doing something really bad. But collectively, we also kind of believe that if you've been cheated on, whatever you do in response to having been cheated on is fair or acceptable, or at the very least, understandable, even if that includes doing things like yelling and screaming and throwing things or damaging someone else's property or even physically hurting someone. At least to a certain extent, we have this idea that people who have been cheated on have been wronged and are allowed to behave as such, and cheaters deserve whatever they get on the receiving end of that. It's kind of like in this case, we think that two wrongs make a right or something to that effect. Now, I'm not agreeing with this line of thinking, mind you. What I'm getting at is that when someone finds out they've been cheated on, that's happening within a particular context. And to reiterate, the context or the features of that context that we want to be aware of are, 1, most of us are not well equipped to digest our uncomfortable feelings in any situation. Two, there are all of these messages out there circulating in the cultural fog that suggest that being cheated on is a very bad thing. And so we as individuals may well think that it is a very bad thing indeed if we find out that our partner is cheating on us. That's the dominant way of thinking about being cheated on that's out there. And there aren't too many alternatives out there in popular culture, right? It's not like there's the dominant message that being cheated on is really bad, but there's also this really robust alternative perspective that holds that while being cheated on might not be something that we're thrilled about, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. There aren't really that many mainstream perspectives that say that being cheated on is anything other than really bad, right? Third, we collectively believe that if you've been cheated on, you have the right to act on your anger in ways that might not be considered acceptable in many other circumstances. And what you want to understand is that these are likely to be features of the context your partner is operating within if or when they catch you cheating. They may be pretty darn upset, they may not be able to digest their feelings, and they may feel pretty justified in being pretty darn upset with you and taking their anger out on you in any number of ways. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that your partner will go ballistic and erupt and go crazy, so to speak, but they might, right? They might. And by the way, this is an important time for me to say that I have the utmost empathy for people who are cheated on. Sometimes people suggest or even tell me explicitly that I must not care about the experiences of people who are cheated on if I work to support people who are cheating, and nothing could be further from the truth. So I want to make it clear that I'm using this kind of language as lightly as I possibly can here. I'm not trying to minimize anyone's hurt by saying that they might, quote unquote, go crazy or go ballistic, quote unquote, if they find out they've been cheated on. I take the emotions behind their actions very seriously. But it's also important to stress that if your partner catches you cheating and they quote unquote go crazy, they may do some things that end up being pretty unpleasant for you to deal with. And what I really want to underscore here is that even if you think that telling your partner that you want to end your relationship with them, or telling your partner that you've been cheating, or doing both of those things at once, may sound like a really awful experience to have, but it's possible that them catching you cheating might be a lot worse, right? You probably don't want your aggrieved spouse or partner to show up screaming at your affair partner's home or place of work. You probably don't want your aggrieved spouse or partner to call every member of your family and tell them that you are a cheater. You probably don't want your aggrieved spouse or partner to be so mad at you that they attempt to take you for everything you have in your divorce or your process of splitting up. Again, I want to be really clear that in saying that these things happen does not mean that they always happen, but these things do happen sometimes. And even if your aggrieved spouse or partner does not fly off the handle and wreak havoc on your life, so to speak, they may be really, 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 really hurt and sad and disappointed and act from these feelings in ways that aren't a lot of fun for anybody to experience. Now, it's true that they might be sad and hurt and disappointed if you simply tell them that you don't want to be romantically partnered with them anymore. Certainly that's a possibility. But you may want to consider that them being sad and hurt and disappointed in the context of you telling them that you want to leave your relationship might be a lot better on the whole than them being sad and hurt and disappointed in the context of them catching you cheating. To that effect, what I want you to consider is that right now you might have a golden window of opportunity on your hands. If you are cheating and you are as sure as you can be that your partner has no idea that you're cheating on them, you probably have the luxury of deciding to end that relationship and actually ending that relationship without your cheating becoming an issue in the breakup. You may have the opportunity to leave your relationship without having gotten caught cheating, for one thing, and in a manner that allows the focus of the breakup to be on your desire to move on from that particular romantic relationship instead of the focus being on you having cheated, right? This is not a small thing. And of course, taking advantage of this opportunity requires you to actually make a decision about what you want to do about your relationship and then take action in the service of that decision. And those tasks may seem daunting, but recognizing that you have this opportunity to potentially exit your primary relationship without your cheating being the focal point of the breakup might be a great incentive to step up to the tasks, right? Now, some people would say that breaking up with someone in part because you are cheating on them, but without telling them that you are cheating on them is super disingenuous. But here's the thing. If you're already cheating on someone and you want to be as caring towards them and respectful of them as possible, this strategy might be better than a lot of the other alternatives. Remember, if you don't want to be in a relationship with someone anymore, the most important thing you need to tell them is exactly that. Ending a relationship, but choosing not to disclose information that could be considered relevant to your decision to leave the relationship might be less bad, if we are going to speak in such terms, than staying in the relationship, continuing to cheat, and waiting for your partner to bust you before you do anything. The other thing, of course, is that you think it's problematic to end your relationship without telling your partner about what you've been doing infidelity-wise, is you can just tell the person you're breaking up with about your cheating. You can just disclose your infidelity. And you might want to do that, and if you do, that can be great. But you don't have to want to do that. You get to live by your own moral code here, and if that includes disclosing your cheating to the person you're breaking up with, then by all means you can. Of course you can. The problem is that so often we use our own moral codes against ourselves, so to speak, in really weird ways, and we don't even recognize that we're doing it. For instance, people often tell me that they really don't want to hurt the person they're cheating on. But what this often translates into in terms of that person's actions is the person not making a decision about whether or not they want to end the relationship with the person they're cheating on, or making a decision that they don't want to be in that relationship anymore, but not actually ending the relationship because they're so afraid that it will hurt their partner. And what that often means is that they continue their cheating and deception, and they continue to stay in the relationship with the person they don't want to be with anymore. And these are all things that, if discovered, the cheater's primary partner might find pretty hurtful indeed. But instead of thinking about things in this way and doing something about this, the cheater often feels too paralyzed by their fear of hurting their primary partner, and so their whole infidelity situation continues. And of course, the longer the infidelity situation goes on, the greater the chances they have are of getting caught, right? And then if the partner actually catches you, they may be very hurt indeed. And your moral code, your not wanting to hurt them, has actually contributed to you doing things that they may find extremely hurtful, as opposed to perhaps to simply very hurtful, right? They might not love it if you tell them that you want to end their relationship with them. Of course, they might not love that. But they might really not love it if they catch you in like a multi-month, multi-year affair that you've been too scared to do anything about. Yikes. So all of this is to say that if you've been thinking that it seems really hard to make sense of your infidelity situation and make decisions about what you want to do and potentially put an end to a romantic partnership with someone you really don't want to hurt, I want you to consider that doing all of those things on your own terms might be preferable to doing those things within the context of having been caught cheating. I want this episode to serve as just another bit of motivation to get your shit together sooner rather than later and work towards resolving your situation in a way that's truly right for you in a reasonably efficient manner. Because when we don't do that, things may happen that change the context we're operating within in ways we may not like. Dealing with things as they are right now may seem really hard, but things could change to make your situation even harder to deal with. And I don't love saying that because it sounds like a threat or like fear-mongering. In any kind of situation in life, it's often true that dealing with something earlier rather than later makes it easier on the whole to deal with. And when I say easier on the whole to deal with, I mean easier for you and for the others involved, or better, quote unquote, for you and for the other parties involved. You might actually prefer, for your own sake, to deal with your infidelity situation by making decisions sooner rather than later, rather than waiting to get caught and decisions either be made for you or you having to make decisions in an even more difficult context. You might ultimately prefer for your marriage or your primary relationship to end within the context of you sitting your partner down and saying, "Honey pie, I care about you so much, but I don't want to continue this romantic partnership," rather than having it end in the context of your spouse or primary partner discovering you're cheating and feeling totally betrayed by you. Or you might prefer to tell your partner about your infidelity rather than having them discover it on their own or hear about it from somebody else. Yeah, doing these things might be really tough for you. Looking your partner in the eye and saying, "I don't want to be with you anymore," can be excruciating. Looking your partner in the eye and saying, "There's something I need to tell you," and that something being that you've been cheating on them, can be exquisitely uncomfortable. But even so, you might prefer to do those things than to take your chances and see what happens if or when your partner catches you cheating. And you get to decide if you would prefer for your partner to have the experience of catching you cheating, or for your partner to have the experience of you initiating the end of your relationship with them before they have a chance to discover you cheating. Maybe you tell them about your cheating when you break up with them. Maybe you don't, but the point is you initiate the breakup. If the relationship is going to end one way or another, how do you want it to end for their sake? Do you want their experience of the end of your relationship to be kicked off with them catching you cheating? You get to make some decisions here about how your situation plays out. Just to be really clear, I'm not saying that you can know for sure what kind of experience your partner would want to have if given the choice. I'm not saying that you can ever be sure that your partner would prefer for you to break up with them and to have the quality of your relationship with them be the focus of your breakup rather than catching you cheating and that being the instigation of the breakup process. Who knows? Maybe they really would prefer to catch you cheating and have your breakup go that way. Maybe they would. Who knows? But you can make a judgment call about what you think they might want or not want. And you can decide how you are going to conduct yourself based on what you think would be most considerate or respectful of them. And of course, you can make a decision based on what behavior you're going to feel best about having engaged in once your situation is in the rear view mirror. So, in summary, it's worth keeping in mind that sometimes people react very strongly when they catch their partner cheating on them. It's worth keeping in mind that this is rather understandable given that we live in a context in which cheating is typically considered really bad. And we typically think that people who have been cheated on have every right to be really angry. Add that to the fact that most of us are not very adept at digesting our most uncomfortable emotions, and you've got a recipe for people to potentially behave in some pretty extreme ways if they catch their partner cheating on them. And the point is not that they should get a free pass on their behavior. The point for you today is to be aware that your partner might react pretty badly to catching you cheating And upon finding out about what you're up to, they might behave in ways that can make life pretty unpleasant for everyone else involved. And that can be a real bummer. That might be something that you want to try to avoid to the best of your ability. And as such, I encourage you to consider that it might be well worth it to do what you can to deal with your infidelity situation as efficiently as you reasonably can so that you don't have to deal with the unpleasantness of getting caught. That's not the only reason why I encourage you to deal with your infidelity situation as efficiently as you reasonably can. There are plenty of other great reasons to do that too. Like, for instance, being able to get on with your life and live out the love life that you most want to be living and devote your focus to things other than your infidelity situation. Those are all pretty great benefits of being willing to resolve your infidelity situation. Last thing I want to say for today is that if you do get caught and it's super unpleasant for everyone involved, number one, I'm sorry. That can be difficult and unpleasant to deal with. And number two, you will survive. And so will everyone else involved. The point of this episode is not that if you get caught cheating, you've allowed something really terrible to happen and you've failed, or that you have this unfixable problem on your hands. No, those are not the points at all. If you do get caught, you can deal with that. And if you have the luxury of dealing with your situation without having been caught, you might want to consider that a golden opportunity and make good use of it while you can. And of course, if you want my help doing this, let's get to work. When you're ready, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I offer confidential, compassionate coaching via Zoom, which means we can work together no matter where you're located. Let's get down to business and begin the process of resolving your infidelity situation in a way that is truly right for you. I can't wait to meet you. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.